Hey everybody, it's Jim Ott, Mr. Ott from school. For those of you that are watching from Bellevue, for the rest of you, my name's Jim. It's nice to see you. I've been doing some videos daily for the school people dealing with mental health issues and coping with the present crisis and the things that are going on and ways we can understand what we're going through and help each other as family members and as a community. On the weekends, I'd like to do some that are a little bit more faith-based, and so this won't be distributed through the school. And you'll need to watch for these separately by either subscribing to the channel or just coming and checking them out. But through my whole career working in the schools, I've always been fascinated by the intersection of mental health and faith. What exactly is going on? And what I've come to realize is that in many ways, they're kind of the same thing in terms of how we think about the world and how we process information and how we deal with experiences, and that the lens of our faith becomes the way that we understand the world that we've been given. And so I really wanted to spend some time on the weekends talking about these things from a faith context. Now, this is actually going to come in three parts because nobody's going to want to watch the full thing in a 30-minute thing. So I'll break this up into three parts, and there'll be three separate videos you can watch. Also aware that some people may be watching this and dealing during these times with own thoughts about faith, and whether there are people who've gone to church, or you've never gone to church, or you've never believed in God, or you've always believed in God. A lot of people have a lot of questions about what's going on with their faith right now. What's going on, like, is there a God? Or if there is a God? Or what does this mean about God? Or, see, this is why I don't believe in God. All of those things are legitimate thoughts to have right now. And this is an opportunity to just talk about them from my point of view. I do want to make a couple disclaimers. And the first one is, the stuff I'm going to talk about in this and the other two videos is not about whether or not the government or our local officials or the world health community or even down to the individual level. It's really not about whether or not people are doing this right. It's not about whether we're handling the situation correctly or making the right kinds of decision. It's much more about how we handle situations is a reflection of what we really believe about the world and about God. And so I'm just interested in looking at it through that broader lens. But I definitely don't want to be in a situation where I'm not being critical of anything that's being done. I certainly don't understand it. I'm not a scientist, and I'm not a government official. And I don't really know all of the dynamics. It's much more complex for any of us to really completely understand. But I am interested in how it reflects both individual and global worldviews and how they impact our mental health decisions as well. And the other disclaimer is I want to say that this is about generalized mental health, about how we deal with anxieties and fears and grief and sadness and even our anger and maybe guilt. It's about that. It isn't about mental illness. And so for people who legitimately have a diagnosable condition that is beyond a simple generalized, say, anxiety, this will be helpful. I believe it can be informative for you and for your faith, but I'm not in any way saying that a person's true mental illness is a result of their thinking. There are a lot of other factors that go into that as well. But the reality is that right now, we are all experiencing a situation that's never been experienced in the world before. Now, some people are saying, yeah, we've had plagues before that killed a lot more people. That's true. We have had plagues through the ages that have killed untold numbers, thousands and millions, and huge percentages of populations wiped out. But we've never had this unique combination of a plague and information. And so in addition to knowing that there's this illness out there that's circulating around, we are inundated with this perpetual flood of information about it, some from legitimate sources, some from just what people have heard, a lot of sharing that can go on, that in the old days you might have been able to share with a couple people close to you, but now really the entire world can know anything at any moment. And so that kind of combination of worldwide plague and worldwide information really means that we've never shared a time where there's this overall sense of worry and anxiety and fear that is being shared all over the whole world. We've never really probably seen a time where the whole world, and truly the whole world, was reaching a point of having to ask questions about purpose and meaning and why and how does this happen and what does it mean, and to some extent asking questions about what does this mean about God? Like, where is God in all of this? And there may never have been a time when people have asked these kinds of questions more universally, where everybody's talking about this to some extent. I was trying to think of another time. Maybe World War II might have been a time, but even then, there were places in the world that were not really directly affected by World War II, and the process of information was completely different. Certainly, 9/11 was a time, but we can even say that 9/11 was something that happened to Americans and impacted people worldwide, but in some places probably didn't provoke a whole lot of questioning about who God was or where God was in all of it. So this is really a unique opportunity to examine what it is that both people of faith and people of no faith are doing with our present situation. So one of the first things I guess I want to ask is, maybe just recognize that there's all kinds of people out there, and I'm just one of them. So I'm a follower of Jesus. I'm doing my best to understand who Jesus is, who Jesus was, to follow the leading of Jesus as best as I can do it through prayer and through study of the Bible, through interactions with others that are attempting to follow Jesus. And one of the questions I'm finding myself asking is, in this time of stress, where a lot of people are asking about God, how are we as followers of Jesus representing God? Like, when people encounter us, what kind of a God do they meet? What kind of a Jesus do they meet? And in order for us to really know that about ourselves, we have to be pretty self-aware about our own faith. And so what I want to do is take us through a little bit of a process of understanding where our faith comes from. And this is something I do in schools, and I do it in a completely secular setting where it's not really about God, although it is about God. Like, it's a part of the conversation. And it's really, how do we get this understanding of what we really think about how the world works? Excuse me, that would be the coronavirus right there in my throat. But you're on a screen, everything's safe, you should be fine. All right, so what we're going to talk about is a definition of faith that isn't so much about what you believe in God. So it's not, do you have faith? Yes, you believe in God. Or don't you have faith? No, I don't believe in God. I want to give you a definition of faith, which is basically this. Your faith is your underlying assumption, sometimes unconscious, about how the world works. And everybody, by this definition, has a faith. Now, in one of my videos last week, I showed this little picture about how we all know the situation where it's not supposed to be this way. We all kind of live in this world where things happen that are not supposed to be. And that we're actually appealing then to a way that things are supposed to be. So we can look right now and we can say, okay, the coronavirus plague it's not supposed to be this way. There is a way it's supposed to be. We're all supposed to be safe and healthy. What happens in the gap then is a process that we'll just call grief for right now. And you can watch the video from last week to get more details on that. But we have negative emotions that occur in the gap as we deal with the fact that things aren't the way that they're supposed to be. When you were really young, you had to start consciously explaining and making sense out of the gap to be able to explain why things aren't the way that they're supposed to be. The emotions were real, but they fueled your intellect to try and figure out why they're not the way they're supposed to be. So give me a second. I'm just going to add a little thing to our picture here. Everybody then, in explaining this gap, developed a faith about how the world works. And that faith is your explanation even if you don't believe in God. And so, just to break it into really simple terms, if you believe in God, if you are a person whose faith, whose understanding of how the world works involves God, then prove to me that there is a God. And the reality is, you get into a conversation and you can't really prove it. It's something you choose to believe. But if you're a person who doesn't believe in God, you're a card-carrying atheist, as we would say. You absolutely don't believe that there is a God. Prove to me that there is no God. And you find out that you're in the same position as a person who does believe in God. You can't prove there isn't a God any more than I can prove there is a God. And in the end, we base our decision about God on our understanding of how the world works, and that becomes our faith. We have a faith, an explanation of how the world works. Everybody's faith, atheist, agnostic, believers of all different kinds of religions, as near as I can tell, everybody's faith that I've ever met has embedded in it an assumption that we should be in control and that things that happen are explainable in a cause and effect way. This is true for people who follow Jesus, that we are in control, we should be in control. This is for people who are total scientific atheists, would never believe in God. We still have this sense that we ought to be in control of the circumstances. So this is a true part of faith for people who believe in God. It's a true part of faith for people who don't believe in God. It's just not true. In the next couple of videos that I'll put out on this, which they'll just be right back to back here, what I want to do is investigate the illusion of control and how it gets us into all kinds of mental health problems, as well as faith problems, when our ability to control meets the realities of what we can't control. So I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a great day.